"Leave, you useless old ladies who can't even clean properly." My husband and I, who were living with our eldest son and his wife, were giving $3,000 to help with expenses every month. But his wife would often insult us with hurtful words and make life difficult for us. We were fed up and angry. We didn't want anything to do with her anymore and decided to get back at her someday. My name is Susie. I'm 62 years old and work part-time while also taking care of our home. I live with my husband David, who is the same age as me. David works in an office and is a kind and serious man, so we have a stable income and rarely argue. Our son, Lawrence, is 32 years old. He's just like his dad, kind-hearted and responsible. After finishing university, he got a job at a private company and is working hard. 2 years ago, he married a woman named Emily, whom he met at work. However, it turned out that Emily was actually a very mean person. When we first met her, she appeared to be serious and nice. Lawrence assured us that she was hardworking at her job and had a good relationship with her bosses. Emily is 6 years younger than Lawrence, and although we weren't sure if they would get along, we trusted Lawrence's judgment. After they got married, Lawrence and Emily moved into their own apartment. Emily promised to take care of all the household chores so Lawrence could focus on his work. Lawrence seemed appreciative of her help. He often said, "Thanks to Emily taking care of everything at home, I can concentrate on my job." I'm grateful. My husband and I believed that our son had chosen a good wife. But Emily's true nature began to emerge gradually. We had a family gathering for New Year's, and when I saw Emily, I didn't even recognize her at first. She looked completely different. The last time I saw her, she had black hair and wore minimal makeup, appearing reserved. But now, she had transformed into a bold woman with pink hair, wearing loud bracelets on her wrists. She seemed like a whole different person. My husband, David, and the rest of our family were surprised by Emily's drastic change. Lawrence tried to smooth things over. "I'm sorry if this caught you off guard." I was also surprised when I came home from work one day to find Emily like this. But she manages the household well, and we don't have any problems. Plus, Emily is a full-time homemaker. Can we overlook this? After hearing Lawrence's explanation, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Well, if Lawrence is fine with it, then so am I. I was just taken aback by how different Emily looks now. It's not fair to judge someone solely based on appearances, and it's not my place to complain. My family seemed to agree with my sentiment. Later, we all had a good time drinking together until Emily caused a scene. She got extremely drunk and started hurling insults at everyone around her. "You dare to defy me?" I once took down 3 classmates at once back in middle school. It became evident that she had a tendency to become aggressive when intoxicated. She even directed hurtful words at me and David, yelling, "Stop clinging onto life needlessly, you old pests. Nobody is pleased that you're still alive." Her words cut deep. There's a limit to what's acceptable, even under the influence of alcohol. David looked furious, and Lawrence was visibly shocked. "Hey, even for a drunken conversation, you've crossed the line. Apologize." However, Emily didn't even listen to Lawrence. "You dump all the chores on me, then have the guts to lecture me, a weakling like you. I could take you down in a heartbeat." Emily kept on with her verbal assault, causing chaos and trouble for everyone around. Eventually, she passed out from the alcohol and the tension eased, but the mood remained sour. Everyone was furious with Emily. Then one of the relatives brought up Emily's earlier claim about defeating classmates. Was she a troublemaker in the past? They asked. No, Lawrence replied. Emily graduated from a public university. I always thought she was a serious person. But the relative remained doubtful. Do we have any proof she's been on the straight and narrow? Maybe we should dig into Emily's past to see what kind of person she really is. I agreed with the idea. It might be worth looking into, I said. Lawrence promised to investigate further. Since Emily had no living parents and few ties to her relatives, he decided to hire a private investigator. The investigation uncovered that Emily had been quite rebellious during her middle school years and even led a group of troublemakers. She was so infamous that even the local troublemakers followed her lead since she was in 9th grade. Concerned about her future, Emily started to put on a more serious facade. Despite graduating from a public university, she remained connected with her rowdy group of friends. Even now, when Lawrence was at work, Emily would invite these troublesome friends over, causing disturbances that annoyed the neighbors. It became clear that Emily was hiding her true nature. She was indeed a troublemaker. Frustrated by this behavior, Lawrence brought up the idea of divorce. However, Emily reacted with tears and pleading. "I'm sorry. I'll change and be more serious. Please forgive me. I need you, Lawrence. Please don't leave me." She even reverted to her old appearance and deleted her friends' contacts from her phone right in front of Lawrence. She apologized to the relatives she had upset during the New Year's gathering and repeatedly called me to apologize. Seeing her efforts, Lawrence began to reconsider his decision. As a result, Lawrence and Emily decided not to divorce and opted to continue their married life. Since Lawrence was the one married to Emily, my husband, and I felt it wasn't our place to interfere too much. So we respected Lawrence's decision. When I saw Emily again at the family summer gathering, she seemed to have become a more serious person, and I hoped things would be fine from then on. However, one day while I was at my part-time job, I strained my back while lifting a heavy object. The pain was so severe that I couldn't move. My colleagues rushed me to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with a significant back strain and advised to rest. When I called Lawrence to tell him about it, he suggested something unexpected. "Why don't you come and live with us? Both Emily and I, along with Dad, could take care of you. At your age, incidents like these might happen more often, and it would be better if we were there to help." As I pondered the idea, it seemed like a sensible solution. Once my back pain had subsided, my husband, Lawrence, Emily, and I sat down and discussed the idea of living together. We all agreed it made sense, especially considering our spacious single-family home. With no space issues, Lawrence and Emily moved in with us, and we began our shared living arrangement. Initially, everything went smoothly. Emily took on half of the household chores, which lightened my load significantly. My husband and I contributed financially, providing around $3,000 each month to cover expenses. Although my part-time job limited my financial contribution, I wanted to ease the financial strain on Lawrence and Emily as much as possible. However, Emily's behavior started to change gradually. She began claiming she wasn't feeling well and started pushing more of the household responsibilities onto me. Initially, I believed her and took on the extra chores, but I soon noticed inconsistencies. She appeared perfectly healthy, eating hearty meals and even going out for leisure activities all day. Feeling perplexed, I confronted Emily gently, expressing my concerns. "I hate to question this, but are you truly unwell? You seem energetic and spend a lot of time outside." Emily's response was a fierce glare. "Why are you doubting me?" she snapped. "If you keep this up, I'll give you a piece of my mind." I was taken aback by her coarse language. It was evident she felt no remorse. She was likely only pretending to change to avoid losing Lawrence. Emily, sensing my shock, scoffed, "Are you scared, Aria?" "Well, get used to it. I've played the quiet girl for too long. It's time for me to be myself." "You're aware of the consequences if you continue, right, Emily?" It seemed Emily had used intimidation tactics before, perhaps during her school days. This behavior had carried over into adulthood, where she could manipulate others to get her way. While I couldn't deny feeling afraid of Emily, I hadn't lived 62 years to be pushed around. Holding my ground, I warned her sternly, "If your behavior crosses the line, it could be considered a crime, you know? I'm not here to obey your orders like a robot. If you push too far, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities." Emily appeared surprised by my unexpected response, but she quickly fired back, "Shut up, old woman. I'll never forgive you." Her outburst startled David and Lawrence, who rushed to see what was happening. They were both home since it was their day off. After briefly explaining the situation, David and Lawrence frowned. It was decided that the four of us would discuss the matter. "Diva." David addressed Emily firmly. "Firstly, apologize to Susie." However, Emily refused to apologize. Instead, she crossed her arms defiantly. "Why should I apologize to an old woman? I thought Susie would handle the household chores, so I agreed to live together, but my workload hasn't decreased as I expected. It's only gotten worse." Emily's next words were even more shocking. "No matter what anyone says, I won't change. From now on, you'll all do as I say. Oh, but Susie and David are useless. You two old hags can leave since you don't even contribute to the household chores." Her words ignited a fire within me. I've had it with this woman. I resolved firmly to seek revenge. My usually calm husband seemed equally furious, his face flushed with anger. "Should we leave now feeling the same?" he asked. "Or should I distance myself from Emily immediately?" I nodded in agreement, saying, "Yes, let's go." My husband and I swiftly packed our belongings and left without delay. Although we said we were moving out, we couldn't take large items like dressers, so we planned to return for them later. Lawrence mentioned he still needed to talk to Emily, so he chose to stay behind. My husband and I headed to a budget hotel for the time being. We didn't own another house, and we didn't want to burden our friends, so we opted to stay there until we found a new place. The next morning, Emily began bombarding my cell phone with calls starting at 8 a.m. Initially, I considered ignoring them, but her persistence was relentless, with 20 calls in just 1 hour. Though I regretted not blocking her number sooner, I felt a twinge of curiosity about her intentions, prompting me to answer once. "Hello, is this Susie?" Emily's voice sounded unnaturally sweet on the other end. Instantly, I sensed mischief brewing, and frankly, it gave me the creeps. From her serious demeanor to her sudden shift to a cutesy persona, I couldn't help but wonder how many faces Emily could wear. Regardless, one thing was clear. I couldn't trust her, no matter which version showed up. Realizing the futility of continuing the conversation, I simply replied, "No, thank you," and promptly ended the call. I blocked her number and barred her from all messaging apps to prevent further contact. My husband, observing my actions, followed suit. As a united front, we decided to cut off all communication from Emily indefinitely. Later in the afternoon, Lawrence called me. "Mom, I've divorced Emily. I left the house early this morning and just submitted the divorce papers." He explained that when he had informed Emily of his decision the previous night, her response had been dismissive. "Try if you can." With no hesitation, Lawrence proceeded with the divorce. Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Staying with someone like Emily would never lead to happiness. I shared with Lawrence that Emily had called earlier, acting strangely cutesy. Lawrence's expression soured at the mention of Emily's behavior. Back when Emily was rebellious, she would resort to acting cute to smooth things over with her boyfriend whenever things got awkward. She's incredibly naive if she thinks that tactic will work now that we're all adults. His sentiment resonated with me completely. Emily's been cheating too. What, really? I was genuinely taken aback. The thought that she would add infidelity to her already despicable behavior was beyond belief. Her claims of illness seemed increasingly dubious to me. She appeared perfectly healthy and went out far too often. Suspecting there was more to her story, I decided to hire a private investigator. The results were shocking. Emily had been cheating with an unknown man. Lawrence even provided photographic evidence showing Emily kissing a young man in public, his green hair making him stand out. I warned Emily that I pursue legal action against her, and I fully intend to. I'll also seek damages from her affair partner, Lawrence informed me. As I examined the photos he sent to my phone, Emily's nonchalant attitude in response to the accusations puzzled me. Then why did she call me? I pondered aloud. Who knows? Maybe she wanted to know where I was after I moved out. Emily never expected me to leave. She thought if she acted tough and intimidating, I'd stay, Lawrence surmised. But now that I'm gone for real, I think she panicked and tried to win me back. I sighed deeply. Regardless of her motives, I had no desire to aid someone like her. I hoped she would experience the full weight of loneliness on her own. After some time, my husband Lawrence and I managed to secure a new apartment where we could all live together. Initially, we contemplated evicting Emily from our old house and returning there. But considering its size and potential vacancy in the future, we deemed it more practical to sell it off. Lawrence agreed, expressing his willingness to part with the property. "Living there isn't a necessity for me. Selling it sounds like the best option," he remarked. As for Emily losing her place, it was of little concern to us. With the help of relatives, we returned to the old house to retrieve our belongings. To our dismay, Emily greeted us with a smug grin, suggesting that we resume living together. I realized I can't bear loneliness. Wouldn't it be better for us all to live together again? Plus, I want to save money and avoid paying Lawrence any alimony, she proposed audaciously. Her bold request ignited my simmering anger. If you're going to make a request, at least do so humbly. This isn't a matter for jest. No matter how you plead, I won't entertain it, I snapped. David, my husband, interjected with a cold tone. We're selling this house, so leave promptly and fulfill your obligations to Lawrence. I could never forgive you. Stop attempting to reignite our relationship." Lawrence echoed his sentiments firmly. Emily's flirtatious facade crumbled at his words. "Lawrence has a stable income, so I initially thought marrying him would allow me to relax and become a housewife. But now, there's no ulterior motive. I truly love Lawrence. And of course, I need both of you, Susie and David," Emily insisted. However, her words did little to quell the seeking anger within us. Mine, David's, and Lawrence's, only serving to stoke the flames further. In that tense moment, a previously silent relative, who had been observing the situation, couldn't remain silent any longer. They interrupted Emily with a firm voice. "Emily, you are a despicable woman. If you have so much to say, why don't we settle this with a fair fight? You seem confident about your strength." With a hint of intimidation, the relative revealed their physical prowess, reminding Emily that they had competed in a national karate competition. This relative in their 30s was well known for their strength, and we had called them in case Emily decided to cause trouble. Sensing the imminent threat, Emily recoiled. No, I don't want to fight. Once you leave, don't ever bother Susie and the rest again. Leave quickly, but before you do, offer a proper apology," the relative warned in a low voice, exuding an intimidating presence. Emily, subdued by the imposing atmosphere, acquiesced with a whimper. Emily's sudden change in demeanor caught us off guard as she swiftly replied, "Yes, I understand. I'll leave immediately. I'll leave all my large belongings here. I'm truly sorry," she groveled. "Good riddance." Packing her belongings and departing, the relative smirked. It was evident that Emily's tough facade crumbled in the face of those she perceived as stronger. As David, Lawrence, and I watched her retreat, we couldn't help but burst into laughter. With the nuisance finally gone, our moving preparations proceeded seamlessly, and we successfully relocated to our new home without any trouble. Following her departure, Emily rented an apartment and began living alone. True to Lawrence's warning, he filed for alimony, which Emily and her lover promptly paid, likely due to the involvement of a lawyer. It appeared that Emily couldn't stand up to someone with greater power, as my relative had predicted. Since then, I've kept my distance from Emily, but I've heard about her activities through various sources. News reports and conversations with acquaintances have painted a picture of Emily's life following her departure. Initially, Emily depleted most of her savings to fulfill her alimony obligations. With plans to marry her former affair partner and rely on his income, she was left in the lurch when he severed all ties. Desperate for stability, she attempted a job at a private company only to quit abruptly after clashing with her boss. In a shameless bid for financial support, she approached me, my husband, and Lawrence at our workplaces, but we steadfastly ignored her pleas, causing her to eventually give up. Facing mounting debt and rejection from her former associates, Emily's desperation led her to assault one of her gang members in a fit of rage, resulting in her arrest and subsequent imprisonment. My husband, Lawrence, and I couldn't help but feel that she had reaped what she sowed. Emily had a history of troublemaking, never showing any remorse for her actions. It seemed only fitting that she face the consequences of her behavior behind bars, where she could hopefully reflect on her choices. In stark contrast, my husband, Lawrence, and I were enjoying peaceful, contented lives. The three of us lived harmoniously together, and we even had plans for a trip on our next extended weekend. Our apartment offered the convenience of easy cleaning and proximity to the station, making it a wise choice for our new home. We were determined to continue cherishing our tranquil existence as a family of three.
Hi, I'm Liz Thompson, 27 years old. Been married for 5 years with my husband James, who's 30. We have a little boy named Jack, he's 4. I used to work full-time, but now I'm part-time at the same job. James won me over with his determination, and that's how we ended up together. When James and I were dating, he was really sweet, but after we got married, he became controlling, like he thought he didn't need to make an effort anymore. He's super lenient with his younger sister, Jennifer, who's almost 20. Even though there's a big age gap, he spoils her rotten. Before we got married, I got along fine with her, but things changed. Jennifer started showing up at our place all the time, and James would drop everything to cater to her. It's like I'm just a roommate, and she's the queen of the castle. She never brings anything when she comes over and acts like it's totally normal to ignore me. As usual, James invites Jennifer to join us for dinner, even though it was just supposed to be the three of us. She accepts without hesitation, saying that's why she came. I quietly remind James that there's only enough food for three, but he insists I give my portion to Jennifer since she's here. He even suggests I should always prepare extra in case she shows up unexpectedly. Jennifer apologizes to me, but it feels more like she's happy James is on her side. James scolds me for not being more accommodating to his sister. Feeling frustrated, I make something for myself and join them at the dining table. When Jennifer sees me, she asks James to have a private conversation, excluding me and my son from the table. This isn't the first time I've had to move Jack's meal elsewhere and eat separately. After they finish eating and I start cleaning up, I notice James and Jennifer chatting on the couch, leaving the dishes for me to clean. It feels like they see me as a maid, ignoring both me and my son. I sigh and begin cleaning up, getting ready to bathe Jack. As I approach them, James asked me to get a piece of strawberry sponge cake from the bakery downtown for Jennifer. It was nearly 8 p.m., and I knew it was time to bathe Jack and put him to bed. When I explained this, Jennifer complained to James, saying she really wanted the cake and that skipping Jack's bath for one day wouldn't hurt. James started getting angry, knowing the argument would persist until I agreed. Reluctantly, I agreed to go to the bakery. The bakery was about to close at 9 p.m., so I hurried to get ready, knowing I could make it in time. As I prepared, I overheard James and Jennifer talking loudly, criticizing me for being inflexible and questioning why James married me. Jack wanted to come along, so we decided to go together. As I stepped out, James shouted that we'd get a divorce if I defied him again, and Jack, though young, looked concerned. Trying to hold back my tears, I asked Jack what kind of cake he wanted. His eyes lit up as he said he wanted a cake with lots of apples. We chatted happily about cake on the way, momentarily forgetting the hurtful words. When we reached the cake shop, it was almost closing time. I bought 2 slices of strawberry sponge cake and 1 slice of the fruit-covered cake Jack wanted, though the options were limited. Back home, I served James and Jennifer their cake slices and put one for Jack on a plate, heading to the dining table. Jennifer remarked that Jack's cake looked better, and surprisingly, James swapped it with hers. When Jack protested, Jennifer ignored him and ate his cake. James justified it by saying he bought it with his money, dismissing Jack's right to choose. I was furious and confronted them, but James threatened divorce again. Jack stopped crying, but his worried look broke my heart. After a moment's thought, Jack began eating the strawberry shortcake that Jennifer was meant to have. "Mommy, this cake is delicious. I'm glad I got this one," he said, trying to mask his discomfort. It was distressing to see 3 adults subjecting a young child to such a situation. When Jennifer reached for Jack's cake, I quickly intervened, suggesting we eat in another room. I wanted Jack to enjoy his cake in peace. James protested, saying it was fine for Jennifer to have a bite, but I ignored him and took Jack to the other room. There, watching Jack savor his cake, I felt a sense of relief. Afterward, we bathed together, ignoring James and Jennifer, and cuddled up in Jack's bed. The next morning, Jennifer had already left when I woke up. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Jack crying and found his porcelain piggy bank, a gift from my father, broken with the money missing. Jack always said goodnight to it, as he did last night. I suspected James knew something about it, and when I asked, he admitted Jennifer broke it for money without remorse. As I comforted Jack, tears streamed down my face. It was heartbreaking to see James prioritize Jennifer over Jack's well-being. His callousness pierced me, and the mix of sadness and anger engulfed me. James, unmoved by our tears, complained about feeling gloomy in the morning, leaving me shattered. I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer and confronted James. "Don't you see how wrong this is, making Jack cry like this?" It was the first time I spoke out in anger. I never wanted Jack to witness marital discord, but I couldn't contain myself anymore. James didn't respond. Instead, he stormed off to the bedroom and returned with divorce papers, thrusting them at me. "If you're not happy with me, let's end it," he said before leaving for work. Jack had never cried over anything involving James and Jennifer before, but since last night, he had been inconsolable. I, too, had reached my breaking point. "Jack, let's take a break today and skip daycare, okay?" I suggested. Jack cheered, thrilled at the idea of spending the day with me. "Mommy's the daycare teacher today, right?" he said, his face beaming as he nestled on my lap, looking up at me with pure joy. I marveled at how much patience a young child like Jack must have. So we made a pact to spend the day playing to our heart's content, releasing all that bottled-up patience. I knew taking the day off work would be inconvenient, but I believed it was the best thing for Jack. After explaining the situation, I managed to get some time off. We spent the morning at the park, playing until we were exhausted, then returned home for lunch. Jack seemed unusually tired and cuddled up to me like a little baby, falling asleep on my lap. Normally, he naps on the couch alone, but today he wanted to be close to me. Instead of doing housework during his nap, I decided to cherish this special moment, finding solace in watching Jack sleep peacefully. Suddenly, I heard the front door unlock, much too early for my husband James to be returning. Instinctively, I grabbed a nearby bag and swiftly hid in the bedroom closet, holding Jack close. As I listened intently, I recognized the familiar voice of the intruder. It was Jennifer. She seemed to be searching for something, muttering in frustration. Why does she have a key? What is she looking for? I wondered anxiously. Peeking out from the closet, I observed Jennifer's movements and listened to her murmurs. After rummaging through various items, she made a phone call, expressing her inability to find whatever she was searching for. Mentioning bro, presumably James, she eventually left, locking the door behind her. The mystery of what Jennifer and James were seeking lingered in my mind. I carefully laid sleeping Jack on the bed and tried to make sense of what had transpired. Perhaps James and Jennifer were searching for something belonging to me, but I couldn't fathom what it could be. The whole situation left me feeling like James was a stranger, filling me with fear. Hastily, I packed Jack's things into the bag I had grabbed earlier. Just as I finished, Jack stirred awake. "Jack, let's go to Grandpa's house," I said, taking his sleepy hand. We hurried to the station and caught the train to my parents' home, just 2 stops away. Arriving unannounced, my parents were surprised to see us. Once Jack was home, he happily engaged with our family dog, bringing a sense of normalcy to the unexpected visit. As we discussed what had happened with my parents, I shared my feelings of fear and explained the situation. I speculated that Jennifer might have been searching for my banking card for my single days, and my parents agreed it was a possibility. You see, I used to run a successful online shop for handmade goods back then, which later expanded with the help of my friends in the same business. Even after getting married and having Jack, I continued to manage the business part-time from home, with my friends overseeing its day-to-day operations. Surprisingly, I hadn't told my husband that I'm still the president of the company, although he knows about my previous success in starting a business when I was single. I'm still employed at my company, but I've kept it hidden from my husband. He believes I've stepped down from my role as president and now work part-time. There's a reason for my secrecy. After we decided to marry, I learned he spends his entire salary with no savings. He expected me to quit and become a full-time homemaker, offering only $300 for groceries. I couldn't agree to this. After heated discussions, we compromised on me working part-time. But that wasn't all. He had me sign a legal document, limiting my claims to marital assets, making me feel financially trapped. Even after our child was born, I only received money for groceries, while I covered clothing and daycare expenses. My compliance may have led him to believe I still have savings from my single days, explaining why they're searching for my old banking card. Furthermore, I've been quietly saving for our child by diverting a portion of my salary to a separate account. It's clear they're after the banking card for financial reasons. There's no other reason for those siblings to be searching. but I'm cautious with my valuables, like my banking card. So even if Jennifer or my husband search, they won't find anything. The bigger issue is Jennifer having a key and unrestricted access to our home, a situation my husband seems fine with. My father suggested keeping my banking card at our family home, so I followed his advice and secured it in our family safe. However, he raised another concern. Why is he so desperate for money? While discussing this with my parents, Jack approached us tearfully, admitting he had broken the piggy bank from my father and failed to save money in it as promised. My father was furious, his face turning red with anger. My father was on the verge of calling my husband to express his anger when my mother intervened. Let's confirm if the banking card is their real objective, she advised. Acting hastily without evidence could backfire, especially considering my husband's casual mention of divorce. He might exploit the situation, painting us as the wrongdoers to gain leverage in a divorce. So we decided to record their conversation to uncover their true intentions and consulted our family lawyer, a longtime friend of my father. Once home, I began preparing dinner as my husband arrived. I discreetly started recording on my phone, placing it face down. As expected, his first question was about the banking card's whereabouts. When I pressed for his reason, he evaded the question, growing frustrated when met with silence. My sister's in trouble, so hand over all your part-time earnings, he demanded. I refused, explaining I was saving for our child. In response, he pulled out a signed divorce paper from his bag and thrust it at me. You can't even manage without me, yet you're arrogant. It's fine not to save for our child anymore, he sneered, implying his sister took precedence over Jack. Without another word, he left me stunned. I halted my dinner preparations, stashed the divorce papers in the bag I'd readied earlier at my parents' house, and took Jack's hand, heading for the front door. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I mean it, my husband warned. I don't want to return to a house where Jennifer can come and go freely, he added. With that, I left the familiar confines of our home. My husband bombarded me with calls and emails, all of which I ignored as I made my way to my parents' house. There, I played the recorded conversation for my parents and showed them the divorce papers my husband had handed me. They asked what I wanted to do. I admitted I'd reached my limit of patience and love, but Jack's well-being was my primary concern. My parents suggested divorce might spare Jack further emotional harm, but they also acknowledged the potential for new wounds. Lost in contemplation, Jack mentioned he was hungry, prompting my mother to whip up his favorite meal, hamburgers. She had anticipated our arrival and stocked up on ingredients accordingly, ready for us to return home at any moment. Tears streamed down my cheeks uncontrollably. I couldn't contain them. Jack's delighted reaction to the hamburger was heartwarming. I wish Grandma could make these every day, he beamed, sharing his joy with my mother. That's because each bite is filled with love, she responded tenderly. Then, Jack fed me a piece, insisting it was filled with love and urging me not to cry. It was too much. I cried even harder, seeing Jack's concern for me. My father intervened, telling Jack these were tears of joy because I was so happy with his sweet gesture. He explained it gently, shielding Jack from any worry. Then my mother hugged Jack, moved by his innocence. I glanced at my father, noticing his struggle to hold back tears, his emotions mirroring mine. When I remarked on the beauty of family, Jack surprised me. Dad says his family is just Jennifer, but my family is Grandma and everyone else, he said, drawing a contrast. My father agreed, emphasizing our bond. Then, with a playful gesture, he asked if we wanted to be a family forever, lifting our spirits with his humor. Reflecting on our joyful meal, I realized it had been too long since we had relaxed together like this. It was a moment of clarity. I needed to proceed with the divorce. I explained my decision to Jack slowly, fearing his reaction. Surprisingly, he seemed relieved, finding solace in staying with the family. Even our older dog, back at my parents' house, received a warm embrace from Jack, who declared him his little brother. With clarity and determination, I knew what had to be done next. It was time to take action. The next day, I made arrangements to meet with my father's friend's lawyer to discuss my situation and finalize my decision to divorce. That night, Jack opted to sleep with my father and our faithful dog, Max. Meanwhile, I shared a bed with my mother, reminiscing about childhood stories until we both drifted off to sleep. The following morning, I reluctantly powered on my phone to find an overwhelming number of missed calls and emails from James, over 200 in total. His messages oscillated between harsh criticisms and desperate pleas for forgiveness, leaving me unsure of his true intentions. With a heavy heart, I decided to switch off my phone once more. In the afternoon, my lawyer arrived, and we delved into the details of my situation, reaffirming my resolve to proceed with the divorce. After thorough discussions, we officially signed the necessary paperwork, and my lawyer assured me he would meet with James the following day. 2 days later, the lawyer returned to my parents' house, and I eagerly inquired about the outcome. To my surprise, it transpired that Jennifer had a severe shopping addiction and frequented male strip clubs, borrowing a substantial sum of money from loan sharks with James as her guarantor. Their plan was to utilize my savings to repay the debt. When repayment was delayed, James confessed but expressed his desire for reconciliation, hoping for Jack and me to return. However, I remained steadfast in my decision to divorce, having already initiated the legal process. James, distraught, asked the lawyer if I could marry someone else. Despite his reluctance to let go, the lawyer affirmed my freedom to pursue future relationships. It was a difficult moment, witnessing James's emotional breakdown as he grappled with the reality of our impending divorce. He finalized the agreement by signing a promissory note to pay Jack $500 in child support each month. With that, the lawyer deemed the matter settled. Later, I received a call from my ex-husband. Our conversation brief but poignant. His once vibrant voice now sounded subdued, speaking with an air of calmness. It dawned on me that he may have believed financially binding me would deter me from seeking divorce, even if I grew to resent him. He confessed to always prioritizing Jennifer, his younger sister, out of a sense of brotherly duty ingrained since childhood. However, he now acknowledged this as a mistake, admitting his jealousy towards Jack, feeling as though I had been taken away from him, despite once loving our son. When he informed me that he and Jennifer had repaid her debts and expressed his intention to reconcile, pleading for me not to remarry, I firmly asserted that my love for him had faded, and there was no chance of reconciliation. Our conversation ended with tears exchanged over the phone as I wished him happiness before he hung up. In the aftermath, I leaned on my parents for support, making arrangements to transfer Jack to a different daycare while reviving my career as a businesswoman. Unable to keep silent any longer, I disclosed everything to my in-laws, who were outraged by the betrayal and resolved to disown James and Jennifer. Now they lived together in a modest apartment, their once close sibling bond deteriorating under the strain of their circumstances. As for me, I'd chosen to view their plight as a form of personal retribution. I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even come to my mom's funeral, had suddenly flown overseas. $200,000. What did you do with all that money? Remember our nice piano at home? I sold the dude. Being from a rich family has its perks. It was a good piano. I never thought it would sell for $200,000. Kenny thought the piano at home was his, but he was wrong. My condolences. I get all the inheritance from the family estate. But that piano was actually bought by our grandpa for my brother, so it's still his. My brother loves that piano and teaches piano now. He left it at our house because it's too big for his place. If my brother finds out we sold it without asking him, he'll be really mad. Just giving him money won't fix it. When I told Kenny this, he hung up right away. Hi, I'm Rachel Schneider, a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a long history tracing back to colonial times and is quite prominent in our community. Thanks to my late father's successful business, we now possess assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was set to inherit the family estate, but he chose love over inheritance, opting to forego his rights to marry his girlfriend, who needed an heir for her family's wealth. This decision left me with the task of finding a spouse to carry on our family name. Despite my desire for independence and reluctance to rely on family wealth, I focused solely on my career, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Realizing the urgency of continuing our family line, I decided to take action and attended a singles mixer. It was there that I met Kenny, my current husband. Surprisingly, he's 10 years younger than me, but at the event, he showed no interest in the younger women and approached me directly. "I'm not sure if you're okay with someone my age," I asked him multiple times. But Kenny gazed into my eyes and replied, "I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been attracted to older, more grounded women." Kenny's demeanor matched his words, gentle and reserved. I sensed he could bring a sense of calm to my family, which tends to be assertive. As our relationship blossomed, there was something important I needed to share with him. My mother had been ill and bedridden for the past year, and my sister-in-law, Catherine, and I were taking turns caring for her. Considering our age and the prospect of marriage, I struggled with how to reveal this to Kenny. Eventually, on our third date, I mustered the courage to tell him. To my relief, he not only accepted but also proposed, expressing his willingness to assist with caregiving. His kindness deeply moved me. At least, that's how I initially felt. Kenny works as a daycare teacher, but just 4 months into our marriage, he expressed a sudden desire to quit his job. When I inquired about the reason, he wore a remorseful expression and said, "Sorry, Rachel. The parents at the daycare are too demanding and complain a lot. I can't handle it anymore." It was evident that Kenny was struggling, appearing so timid. Normally, I would have encouraged him to persevere, but with him assisting in my mother's care and my pregnancy progressing, I remained silent. However, I soon began to regret my leniency. One day, as I exited the shower and approached the bedroom, I overheard Kenny whispering on the phone. What I heard left me shocked and unsettled. I managed to tie the knot without her suspecting a thing. I'm jobless. She bought my story about quitting work hook, line, and sinker. Little does she know, I ditched that job 2 years back. His conversation seemed directed at a friend on the other end of the line. A faint male voice responded, "You're quite the operator. Rachel's family is loaded, so I thought I hit the jackpot when I met her at that singles event. But let's face it, given her age, I was probably her only option. I felt duped. Was the sweet Kenny I fell for all an act?" I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the thought of the baby stopped me cold. With Kenny's true colors revealed, I began to doubt our future. Today, Catherine will be looking after my mom until 5:00 p.m. Then it's my turn. I debated whether to confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, approached me. "Rachel, you seem troubled. If there's anything on your mind, feel free to share," Catherine said, her kindness evident, having cared for her own mother for years and now mine. She's really good with Mom too. So I confided in her about Kenny, and she listened attentively. "It's good you opened up. Keeping it to yourself could harm your unborn child," she reassured me. "Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Talking won't solve everything, but it does lighten the load. Still, this situation is quite something." Catherine looked genuinely concerned, almost as if it were her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Kenny walked in without waiting for an answer. Both of us were surprised, but Kenny acted as if nothing was wrong and smiled. "Rachel, I'll be helping with your mom's care from now on. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you to strain yourself," Kenny said, playing the gentleman in front of me. "Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her." "No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home." "Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help." Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head, as if to say, it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story once I'm gone. With that in mind, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't shake my worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he beat her to it. "I've been meaning to ask, why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house?" he asked, using the same tone as on the phone. "Well, my husband's busy, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why you ask?" Then Kenny interrupted. "What?" and began hurling insults at Catherine. "You live in such a wealthy home. You'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth? So you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you?" It was cruel. I was furious too, ready to leave the room. But just as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes to stay put. Reluctantly, I remained silent and watched the scene unfold. "You've hit a nerve, haven't you? If that's the case, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to my wife and me, so I'll handle my mother-in-law's care alone from now on." With Kenny's stern declaration, Catherine felt it was pointless to argue further and left the scene. Sensing the tension, I discreetly stepped outside, concerned about Catherine's feelings and wondering how to apologize to her. Kenny took over Mom's care entirely, refusing any assistance from me. He only provided basic instructions on caregiving. But his neglectful approach led to tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral took place at the church where generations of our family had been laid to rest. However, Kenny was nowhere to be found from the moment Mom passed away. Despite my attempts to locate him, I was too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to pursue the matter. Relatives and neighbors were puzzled by his absence. Catherine, grief-stricken at the altar, apologized for trusting Kenny with Mom's care. Approaching her, I tried to offer some comfort. "Catherine, please don't blame yourself. It's not your fault." "Rachel, it's not your fault either. But where is that man? I wanted to confront him today, and he disappears just as Mom passes away." "Exactly. And didn't Kenny often leave the house while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going?" "Yes, neighbors mentioned he was frequently out, almost as if he wasn't caregiving at all, just loafing around. They also mentioned a big truck that came by once. What was that about?" I wanted to ask, but with the funeral, I didn't bring it up. Days passed, and Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, I received a call from him. "Hey, Rachel, I'm in a fancy hotel in Europe, like the ones you see on TV travel shows," Kenny said nonchalantly. "Kenny, you missed Mom's funeral, and now this. I spent $200,000. $200,000? Where did you get that kind of money?" "Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Who knew it was worth $200,000? Kenny confessed to selling the family's cherished grand piano and squandering the money on luxury travel in Europe. I never imagined Kenny would pull something like this while supposed to be caring for Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's different. That truck must have been there to move the piano. Why would you do something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you missing the funeral." "Well, once you have a kid, you won't have much free time. Since you have a job, I guess I'll have to be the stay-at-home dad." Kenny's words left me stunned. Despite my anger, his willingness to take on childcare was a silver lining. But it seemed he was aiming to live off me. Additionally, Kenny seemed to think the piano belonged to me. Confronting Kenny, who had unknowingly sold a piano and spent the money, I started with, "My condolences." "Huh? What do you mean?" Kenny seemed bewildered, so I explained about the piano. "That piano belonged to my grandfather, bought for my brother. So it still belongs to him." "Oh, really? I'll just apologize to your brother then," Kenny replied, lacking any remorse for selling someone else's property. Kenny only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he didn't know. My brother is a piano teacher and has loved the piano since childhood. He begged our grandfather for that specific piano. Although there's no room for it in his house now, it's still his. He even dreams of starting his own school with it. The piano means everything to him. I can only imagine what punishment he'll have for you when he hears it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother despises dishonesty. As I explained, Kenny remained silent. Understand? Mere compensation won't suffice when he finds out you sold his beloved piano. He's not one to compromise. I wonder what punishment awaits you. With that warning, the call abruptly ended. He's probably regretting it now. I called my brother and told him everything. Needless to say, he was furious. The next day, Kenny rushed home, finding everyone gathered in the living room. "What's going on? Why is everyone here?" Kenny asked nervously. "I heard everything from Rachel," my brother said sternly. "What possessed you to sell someone else's property, especially something so valuable, without consulting the family?" Kenny tried to justify himself, visibly shaken. I was just trying to pitch in with the household chores out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I figured no one was using it anymore. So you decided to sell it. Yeah, it seemed like a waste to just leave it there. My brother, wearing a stern expression, pressed further. Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale? As anticipated, my brother was playing his part well. Everyone probably knew Kenny had spent all the money on an overseas trip, but my brother was aiming for a confession in front of everyone. Kenny seemed lost in thought, struggling to come up with an excuse. The sales money. Yeah, it hasn't come in yet. Kenny stammered, clearly flustered, but my brother wasn't buying it. You're lying? How deceitful can you get? And what about those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase? Kenny recoiled as if struck by lightning, closing his eyes in shame. I'm sorry, I spent all the money. Kenny's admission left the relatives murmuring in shock. Everyone knew the value of that grand piano. They couldn't fathom how Kenny could blow $200,000 on just one trip overseas. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, locking eyes with him as he said, "As Rachel probably told you, that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you'll repay every penny. If you can't, I'll sue you for theft. Are we clear?" My brother's intensity was palpable, almost resembling a mob boss. While this would typically be a family matter, my brother was likely using intimidation tactics, knowing Kenny was clueless about the law. Predictably, Kenny lost his voice and began sweating profusely. Then, with a terrified glance at me, he pleaded, "Rachel, please help me." His voice was desperate, but I had no intention of intervening. This mess was entirely of his own making. When I rejected his plea, Kenny resorted to a ludicrous argument, saying, "Don't be so cold. I looked after your mom while you were pregnant. I saw the trip as a reward for myself after caregiving. Let's just say we both agreed to sell the piano this way. Since we're siblings, it can't be considered theft, right?" I was so dumbfounded that my mouth hung open, unable to form a response. It was Catherine who stepped in to defend me. "That's enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to assist with caregiving? You even accused me of being after the inheritance and tried to push me away. Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too?" "Yes, I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been scheming to sell the piano without letting Rachel and me near the family home." Catherine's words resonated with me, remembering how Kenny prevented me from getting close to the family home when he said he'd handle our parents alone. I reached the same conclusion. My brother's anger flared up once more. "Listen closely. My wife cared for Mom because she wanted her to stay out of a facility. She agreed out of kindness, not for money. First, apologize to my wife right now." With my brother grabbing Kenny by the collar, tears welled up in Kenny's eyes as he knelt before Catherine. "I'm so sorry, Catherine." Kenny's apology for his disrespectful behavior towards Catherine didn't soften the cold gazes of the relatives. Then, one of them shouted at Kenny, "You need to repay the money from the piano sale promptly. We can't tolerate a criminal in the Schneider family. It'll stain our name." Misinterpreting the situation once more, Kenny made another peculiar remark. "Exactly. We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So let's keep calm. We'll work together as a couple to repay the debt gradually. Even my uncle was left speechless by Kenny's illogical response. Feeling that further discussion would be futile, I excused myself to retrieve something from my room. Ever since the phone incident, I had a divorce lawyer's business card ready. Kenny, call this number. I want our marriage to end. Let's handle things through legal channels. Kenny's face drained of color when he saw the business card I handed him. Why? We're expecting a baby. Why are you doing this? At that moment, I disclosed what Kenny had said to everyone on the phone. You heard that. It was just a joke. Do you think that's a valid excuse? I've known all along that you were after my inheritance. Everyone present glared at Kenny, realizing there was no way to justify his actions. Kenny responded with defiance, unwilling to admit his wrongdoing. Rachel, please, I need your help, Kenny pleaded in desperation. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny had sold the piano, he claimed it was in perfect condition. However, upon inspection, the buyer discovered a large engraving on the back indicating my brother's ownership. It seemed Kenny hadn't checked thoroughly. Instead of selling it through a reputable dealer, he likely chose a shady one enticed by offers like completely free, and now he faced the consequences. Kenny had to refund $200,000 to the buyer, a significant sum considering his debt to my brother. Despite Kenny's attempt to file for bankruptcy, my brother and I took legal action to prevent it. Now, burdened with more debt, Kenny worked tirelessly in manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano was safely returned. Relieved, my brother secured it with a strong lock and installed a security camera in the room, exercising caution. No one will touch that piano until I begin my piano lessons, my brother declared, unchanged from his childhood self, which brought a smile to my face. With his desire to start a piano school at our family home, I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Feeling guilty for inheriting everything alone after Catherine's devoted care for our mother, I proposed the idea to my brother, who agreed. It ensured a positive relationship with his family in the future. And so, I welcomed a long-awaited baby girl. While some relatives hoped for an heir, I believe daughters tend to cherish their mothers longer in today's age. Besides, my mother, an only daughter herself, accepted a son-in-law, so if necessary, my daughter could do the same. Embracing single motherhood, I found unwavering support from Catherine, who had finished raising her own children. Grateful for her assistance during my mother's care, I felt deeply indebted to her. My brother eagerly volunteered to be a father figure for my daughter, his excitement palpable. Additionally, my brother and Catherine's 2 adult daughters, both kindergarten teachers, shared his passion for the piano, bonding with my daughter. Surrounded by such warmth and support, I felt immensely fortunate, and with gratitude, I resolved to face life's challenges head-on with my daughter by my side. I've been saving up a lot lately. My name's Cassie, and I can't help but smirk at my phone with a sneaky laugh. I'm 29 now, married for 2 years, and working hard as a housewife. Some of my coworkers think my smirk is weird, but I can't stop because I'm so close to saving enough money to build my dream home. The balance in my bank account is almost there. My husband, Max, and I don't have kids yet, but we've always planned to have some once we have our own home. I wanted to stay single a bit longer, but at 27, I fell in love with Max, who's a bit older than me. We work at the same company, but in different departments, which can be awkward, but I've stuck with it because finding a new job would mean less money. Now, after a lot of hard work, I'm almost ready to buy our dream home. It's been quite a journey. Life with my husband is smooth sailing, and our savings are growing steadily. We're content with our ordinary jobs and our plan to buy a simple home. Finding joy in this regular life is what makes me happiest. But there's one big hiccup, my relationship with my in-laws. It's the toughest part of being married. When I come home from work to our small rented apartment, seeing my in-laws' shoes at the door instantly drains me. They seem to be here again today. I let out a heavy sigh. I'm home. Oh, you're back. The one who responds isn't my husband Max, but my mother-in-law, comfortably seated on our cramped sofa. Good evening. Do you always come home this late? Our in-laws live just 3 train stops away, which is too close for comfort. That's why my mother-in-law often drops by without considering the inconvenience. You're home late again. What about Max's dinner? This happens too often. No sympathy for my long work hours, just complaints from my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, work was hectic. I'll cook something now. Max has been home for a while. Cassie, aren't you a bit inefficient? Even though Max and I work at the same company, our jobs are very different. Max rarely has overtime in his department, but he earns less. My department, however, is crucial to the company, often requiring me to work late. That's why I earn the highest salary in the company. I never bring this up myself, and I wish Max would, but maybe his pride gets in the way. He never speaks up. Right now, he's just quietly drinking his tea. Even though we both work, I feel like Max could pitch in a bit with the housework, but he steadfastly avoids it. Whether it's shopping, laundry, cleaning, preparing the bath, or cooking. When he gets home from work, he's either glued to the TV or absorbed in his phone. Oblivious to all this, my mother-in-law, as usual, came over to criticize me today. It's okay. I already had dinner with Max. Oh, you've eaten? We had some amazing sushi. I decided to treat Max to something nice for a change. I see. I was taken aback when I heard the name of the sushi restaurant. Isn't that an upscale place? Though surprised, since my mother-in-law footed the bill, I decided to let it slide and started heading to the kitchen to make my own dinner. But my mother-in-law stopped me. Cassie, I hate to ask, but could you do me a favor? I'm a bit short on cash this month. Could you lend me some? Just as I suspected, my mother-in-law often asks for money like this. I wanted to say, hold on a second. That doesn't seem right. You went to a fancy sushi restaurant, didn't you? And last month, you said you were struggling and begged for money. I reluctantly gave you $300, even though we're also tight on cash. And the month before that, and the one before that. Aren't you being a bit careless? But I held back and managed a strained smile. I'm sorry, we're all having a tough time this month. Can't you do anything for your struggling parents? You're the cold one, not me. Who's really cold here? Your son, who neglects his duties at home, leaves his wife alone, and goes out to eat sushi. Seems pretty cold to me. Finally, my husband Max chimed in. Cassie's mom is in a tough spot. Can't you lend her a hand? Oh, so we're really struggling this month, huh? Well, Mom, I'll help you out. Max sighed and pulled $500 from his wallet, handing it to his mother. Max is such a kind and wonderful son, unlike Cassie. I was stunned as my mother-in-law shot me a glare and headed for the door. I thought she was leaving, but then she turned back and glared at me again. Max, if you ever want to divorce your money-hungry wife, you're always welcome to come back home. I'll keep that in mind. With a slam, my mother-in-law left. What was that all about? I turned to Max, who was already lounging on the sofa with his phone. I confronted him. Why did you give her $500? If we have that much extra cash, why not put it towards our household expenses? I had my reasons for asking. While Max pays the rent for this apartment, that's the extent of his contributions. I cover all the bills like utilities, phone, groceries, and other expenses because Max refuses to chip in. What do you mean? I pay the rent, don't I? You expect more than just that. You're so greedy. That's Max's usual way of avoiding financial responsibility. I'm taking care of everything else, including the phone bill you're holding. It's understandable you earn more, but I only make a bit more than your salary. We're barely making ends meet with our expenses and savings. Oh, you have enough to save? Then you should be fine. Suddenly, he reached out his hand when I mentioned savings. What's this for? I gave my mom $500, and now I'm broke. Can you lend me some cash? What? Seriously. This is unbelievable. Despite keeping almost all of his salary except for rent, Max always claims he's short on money every month. He used to justify it by saying, "A man needs to socialize and entertain," and I reluctantly went along. But not today. Why should I foot the bill for you and your mom's sushi? Why am I responsible for that? It's a way to honor parents. What about me? Neither Max nor my mother-in-law ever show appreciation. It feels like I'm just a paycheck to them. And what was that about considering divorce? Exactly what it sounds like. If you keep being so tight-fisted, I might have to consider it. With that, Max locked himself in the bedroom. He even went as far as locking the bedroom door. In our tiny apartment, there aren't many places to go. With the bedroom inaccessible, my only option was to sleep on the sofa. These days, amid all the stress, the only solace I find is in checking my bank account balance. After enduring yet another round of sarcasm and financial demands from my mother-in-law, I'd open my phone before starting my overtime shift at work. Logging into my savings account, which I've had since I was single, I thought everything was on track for our dream home. That is, until I saw something that made me freeze. "What's going on?" I exclaimed, abruptly apologizing to my boss before rushing home. "Max, are you here?" "Oh, what's going on? You're home early today." Max looked surprised. Before him lay an assortment of what looked like expensive sushi, and he wasn't alone. "Welcome home, Cassie. We're just visiting." Both in-laws were present, not just my mother-in-law, but my father-in-law too. I couldn't help but wonder why they were here. "What's happening?" "We're having sushi." "Want some, Cassie?" "Sushi? Where did this come from?" "Oh, we had some extra cash," they replied. Pressing for more details, both Max and my in-laws seemed taken aback. I grabbed Max's collar, as if to keep him from escaping, and he reluctantly handed me something. It was the bank book for the account I had just checked online. Flipping it open, I was left speechless when I saw the transaction history. "What's going on? How did you withdraw this?" I demanded, my anger rising. "Well, I just guessed the PIN, and it worked. Lucky me, right?" Max replied casually, showing no remorse for taking out a large sum of money without my consent. I was furious and on the verge of exploding at Max for his nonchalant attitude. "How dare you take my money without asking?" The funds I had diligently saved since my single days had been withdrawn without my knowledge. "Come on, we're married, aren't we? What's mine is yours. Don't be so uptight. This is the savings I've worked hard for since before we got married. Give it back. Relax, Cassie. What's yours is mine, naturally," Max said dismissively. Living off Max's support while secretly saving such a large amount of money. "You're so greedy," Max accused, his tone accusatory. "Yeah, exactly. You should appreciate me more. Who do you think you're depending on? It's unbelievable. I feel like I'm alone in this. Don't joke around. Taking my money like this is no different from theft. Give it back. Who's joking?" Max snapped, clearly startled by the accusation. Annoyed, he continued, "Don't forget, I'm the one paying the rent here. And I have plenty of social obligations to fulfill. Plus, I help my parents." "Right. Max is such a wonderful son. You leave the rent to me and secretly save all this money. It's easy for you. You only cover the rent. You hardly ever entertain, yet you ask me for money while supporting your parents. Stop it. You married into this. It's only right for you to respect me and my parents. What's more, be grateful I haven't divorced you for being so useless," Max yelled, grabbing my hand and pushing me out the door. "Hey, no sushi for you. Go cool off outside." I never expected to be kicked out. After standing there in shock for a while, I ended up spending the night in a business hotel. The next day, when I returned home, only Max was there. I was relieved the in-laws were gone. But then Max handed me a piece of paper. It was a mutual agreement statement, stating that if I didn't obey him, we would divorce. What's this? "Listen, if you keep complaining, we're getting divorced. If you don't want that, just obey me silently. I'll take charge of the savings from now on," Max declared, flaunting the bank book. Then he got ready to leave. "Where are you going?" Out for a drink. What? Do you have a problem? Want a divorce? He taunted with a smirk and left. Such a foolish man. Did he really think threatening divorce would make me comply? My love for Max had completely vanished. Besides, did he seriously think there was still money left in the account he emptied? I had already withdrawn it all and moved it to another account. I felt uneasy keeping a large sum in one place, so I had multiple accounts. The bank book Max took was just one of them. I signed the paper without hesitation. Max's attempt at a threat didn't faze me. It was exactly what I desired. Quickly, I packed my belongings and left the house. I spent another night at a business hotel, and the following day, I took a day off work to file for divorce as soon as the city office opened. Then, I headed straight to a real estate agency. The previous night, while browsing on my phone at the hotel, I stumbled upon a property that caught my attention. A newly built detached family home near the station, perfect for commuting. It was almost love at first sight. The exterior and interior matched what I had envisioned. After viewing it, I made the decision to purchase the house on the spot. From then on, everything happened in a whirlwind. Staying in a business hotel until the move became too costly, so I explained my situation and stayed with a friend while getting ready for the new house. I had to start from scratch with furniture and other arrangements. Amid the whirlwind of activity, I completely forgot about my ex-husband and former in-laws. "Hey, Cassie!" Max's voice startled me one day when he showed up at my workplace. "Oh, right, we work at the same company." As Max loudly called my name, drawing everyone's attention, he approached me without hesitation. "Why haven't you been returning my calls?" "Oh, I didn't think they were important," I replied, remembering Max's persistent calls. I was preoccupied and didn't want the hassle, so I ignored them. "You withdrew money from the account on your own, didn't you? Stop playing around. And why haven't you come back home? Do you really want to get divorced?" "It's fine," I replied nonchalantly. "We're already divorced, and that money in the account is mine, so I can do as I please with it," I stated firmly. Max still seemed to view the word divorce as a threat. My casual response left him looking bewildered. "What a silly expression. It's almost comical. What divorce? You mean you graciously offered it to me, and I graciously accepted," I remarked. "What? I don't accept this," Max protested. "Whether you accept it or not, the divorce is final." "Oh, and I've already informed the company and completed all the necessary procedures. You might have some paperwork to handle, so make sure to report it to your boss, okay?" With that, I redirected my attention to my computer. "I'm busy." "Where are you living now? You left your belongings at the house," Max inquired. "I took what I needed. I'm comfortably settled in with new things I bought. Don't worry about me. And as for your whereabouts, that's none of your concern. This is a matter of privacy, so please refrain from prying any further," I replied firmly. With that, Max fell silent. Eventually, feeling the weight of the stares from my colleagues and boss, Max left the department without saying another word. "Cassie's been through a lot," my colleagues sympathized. The comfort of my new home was unparalleled. The scent of a freshly built house was unforgettable. It was spacious and cozy. However, having just moved in, there were still many things I needed. Today, I was anticipating the delivery of some appliances I had ordered online. Then the intercom rang. "Ah, it must be here," I thought as I went to open the door. I immediately regretted it. I cursed myself for not checking the intercom. Standing before me was Mother. Technically, my former mother-in-law, but the words slipped out in my surprise. There she stood, accompanied by my former father-in-law. And further back, Max was lingering. "Long time no see, Cassie." "I'm coming in," Mother announced. "Wait, hold on," I protested, taken aback. My former mother-in-law barged into the house and began inspecting it as if assessing its value. "Oh, this property is quite nice. And this furniture is lovely. Move it to my room, will you? Oh, there's a basement too." "Excellent. Then this will be our room," she declared. Excuse me, but what's with these curtains? Dreadful taste." I'll choose new ones for you, so hand over the money, she continued. The garden is quite spacious. Perhaps I'll start a vegetable garden. What were these people going on about? Confused, I turned to Max. Max, what is? Be grateful, Cassie, Max interjected. I was about to confront them when my former mother-in-law cut in with irritation. I looked at her smug expression. It's not much of a house, but as a gift for the parents, it's decent. If it's a two-family home, we'll move in. Of course, as the wife, you'll do the housework. We'll be generous and only ask for $1,000 a month for our allowance. What? What on earth is she saying? Are they from another planet? I couldn't comprehend and just tilted my head. As the wife, I'm single now, you know. I added, surprising both my former mother-in-law and myself. Max, you didn't tell them? I questioned. I don't accept it, Max shouted. But it didn't matter whether he accepted it or not. The divorce was final. We were complete strangers now. Upon hearing my declaration, my former mother-in-law's face paled. What do you mean you're abandoning us? Your parents. My parents live in the countryside. I was planning to invite them over soon, she protested. Don't joke around. This house is ours, she insisted. No, it's mine, I retorted. What was she thinking? This house was purchased with my savings in my name. Then where are we supposed to live? She demanded. I don't know. That's not my problem, I replied, feeling the weight of their expectations. Apparently, they had already sold their house, and the contract was finalized. They planned to live a comfortable life in this house with the money from the sale and whatever they could extort from me. It was a frightening plan. I don't accept this. My former mother-in-law continued to protest. But it doesn't matter. We're strangers now, and this house is mine. I won't accept it, absolutely not, I asserted firmly. In her anger, my former mother-in-law ripped the curtains. Hey, what are you doing? These things I don't need, such bad taste. This is my house. I'll dim as I please, I snapped back. That's right. What's yours is mine. Everything you own is mine, she insisted. Listen, I don't accept this divorce, and both my parents and I are going to live here, Max shouted out. Oh no, this is getting out of hand, I thought, just as I heard sirens. I had secretly called the police when Max and my former mother-in-law barged into the house. Finally, the police arrived. What are you doing? We haven't done anything wrong, they protested. That's right. If anyone should be taken, it's this woman, my former mother-in-law added. After a scene, they weren't arrested but were escorted away by the police. It had been a tumultuous day. After being released, Max continued to come by, insisting on reconciliation and getting picked up by the police each time. He even followed me to work. So after consulting with my boss, George, he received the stern warning. Misusing his wife's savings and assaulting her new home became the talk of the office, leading to an uncomfortable working environment for Max. His resignation seemed to affect him mentally, and he struggled to find new employment. My former in-laws, having sold their house, moved into the cheap apartment where Max and I had lived. It was an old, poorly maintained place, so it wouldn't have fetched much money. With the money from the sale, it seems like the three of them will be able to live modestly. Finally free from all the drama, I'm relishing the comfort of my own home. Although I offered to have my parents from the countryside move in with me, they're not quite ready to make the move yet. So, for the time being, I'm enjoying the solitude of living alone. Perhaps I'll consider remarrying if the right person comes along. But for now, I'm content. One of the first things on my agenda is to get a dog, something I couldn't do while living in the apartment. I also have plans to try my hand at gardening and to host home parties with friends. As I gaze out the window at the blue sky, I think about all the things I couldn't do before and how I want to embrace and enjoy life from now on.
Starting today, we're moving in with my parents. It's not a big deal because they're my own parents, right? But my husband surprised me with this idea out of nowhere. I was so shocked and close to tears, I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just a few days after my father's funeral, my husband decided we should move out of our home. It was a shock because my emotions were still raw from saying goodbye to Dad. He didn't seem to understand my grief and chose our new place without asking how I felt. Surprisingly, it was a villa my father had left me. When we got there, my in-laws had already moved in. I'm Victoria, 29 years old, a product designer with my own successful business. Matthew and I have been married for 5 years. My career is going great, and I'm financially stable enough to own our apartment. Throughout our relationship, my husband felt insecure because I earned more than him. Instead of being happy for me, he saw it as a competition, acting immaturely and choosing rivalry over support. I had hoped for his understanding during this tough time, but instead, our new home felt like a battleground of emotions. My father used to tell me not to worry about him and to focus on my marriage, but I believed it was important to spend time with him while we could. As time went on, I found it hard to hide my frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our love was strong, and we were happy together. But his insensitive remarks about my father's illness changed everything. It was difficult to accept this new side of him. My husband and I both worked from home, but he thought having me around was distracting, so I rented an office space and started commuting. It was convenient because it was on my way to the hospital where my father was being treated. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home all day and left all the chores to me. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and managing the house wore me out. Every day, I came home to find a mess and dirty dishes left by my husband. He seemed oblivious to my exhaustion and lived selfishly. Living with him made me realize he lacked empathy, leaving me feeling terribly alone. Then my father passed away. We had sold our family home as we had discussed with him. Despite being busy with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, often on his phone or disappearing altogether. "Matthew, please help me, especially now," I begged, but he just got another work call. After hanging up, he laughed about all the calls he was getting. My anger and disappointment towards him grew deeper, especially with the sudden loss of my father. He became even colder, and I felt overwhelmingly sad. On the day of the funeral, he spent a long time talking to his parents away from everyone else. When they returned, they were smirking, which made me feel more isolated as others noticed their behavior. Despite everything, the cremation, burial, and inheritance processes went smoothly and the funeral ended well. After my father's death, my husband casually suggested, "Let's move in with my parents starting today. They're my parents, so it should be fine, right? If you don't agree, maybe we should think about divorce," he said with a laugh. But I couldn't stay calm after such an unreasonable proposal, especially while grieving. "How can we live there? We don't have any extra rooms in this apartment, do we?" I questioned. Actually, one room in our apartment served as an office and storage for my husband's work stuff. Since we didn't have kids, he used it freely. "We have that villa you inherited," he replied, smiling. I was shocked. Even though we had sold our family home, the villa held special memories for both my father and me. It was a place I wanted to keep as a tribute to him. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing for his own way. Living in that villa would be really tough for me. I tried to explain, but he didn't seem to listen. His parents had already ended their lease and decided to move into the villa. It seemed they had planned this during my father's funeral. Attracted by its space and peaceful location, their move was already in progress, and I felt like any objections I had would be pointless. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, my husband would get annoyed. "You're always thinking about yourself. You've been away from home so much because of your father's illness and those sudden emergencies. Do you realize how much I've had to put up with because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh and unsympathetic, making my world even darker. "Now that your father has passed, you should listen to me," he went on. "It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long." His cold, heartless comments left me reeling. I didn't want to believe that this was who my husband truly was, but it was becoming painfully clear. He had little regard for my father or me. I remembered the pain on my father's face as he lay in the hospital bed. He would never have wanted me to abandon his memory just to obey my husband's insensitive demands. My husband's lack of empathy was crushing, and I felt more and more alone in my grief and in my battle to honor my father's legacy. In that moment, any love I had for my husband vanished. My heart ached as I considered his apparent excitement about gaining the villa while I was supposed to be grieving for my father. Despite the storm of emotions inside me, I kept my composure and cautioned him, "You may think living in the villa is a good idea now, but you might regret it later." He seemed determined, so reluctantly I agreed to his plan. Taking only a few essentials, I left our home. My husband looked puzzled by my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll get the rest later." Honestly, I had no desire to say another word to him. It hurt to face my in-laws, who seemed to have eagerly awaited my father's death and were now moving into the villa with enthusiasm. I followed my husband in silence. The one thing I couldn't bear was the thought of my beloved place being subject to his whims. The villa, a single-family home near the sea, sat in an average neighborhood but was still conveniently close to the city center. Its land held great value. Stepping out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. My mother was alive then, and I remembered my father carrying me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train. Arriving at the villa, I found my in-laws already inside. Suspicion crept in. It seemed my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. This realization made me even more uneasy. The fact that my in-laws had planned their move without consulting anyone only added to my distrust. As I looked around, as I watched my in-laws, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they imagined their new life in our family home, the villa. It was filled with sturdy furniture carefully chosen by my father, with eclectic European-style furnishings likely picked out by my mother, each piece holding sentimental value. Yet, they seemed oblivious to the true beauty of the villa. "Isn't it perfect? Goodbye cramped apartment living. We're blessed to call this place home now," they exclaimed. The view from the second floor was truly breathtaking. It reminded me of my father's quiet pride in this special place, a stark contrast to my in-laws' insensitive excitement. Amid their excitement over what they dubbed the marvelous House of Secrets, my husband and his parents' enthusiastic comments only grated on my nerves. It seemed they were completely ignoring the emotional weight of my father's passing, treating the villa as nothing more than a fortunate inheritance. The location and the house are both flawless. "We're lucky your father left us this magnificent villa. We owe him our thanks," my husband remarked thoughtlessly, sharing laughs with his parents as they cracked open beers to celebrate their new living situation. As I prepared snacks for them, cherished memories of moments spent with my parents around the dining table felt overshadowed and tainted by the current atmosphere. I chose to bury my emotions and soldier through the night. The next morning, the mood was abruptly shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream echoing through the villa. As I hurried to see what had happened, I found her on the bathroom floor, gripping her foot with a panicked expression. "The floor just gave way under me," she gasped, still shaken from the shock. My husband and father-in-law looked puzzled. "The floor seems fine. You probably just slipped," they suggested casually, brushing off her concerns. They examined the area she pointed to, but the floorboards appeared smooth and perfectly aligned. However, she insisted, "I'm certain the floor collapsed." As they continued their cursory inspection, I intervened. "Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor?" I asked, surprised. They all focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping forward, I pressed down on the discolored section with my slippered foot, and immediately the floorboard made a distinct sound and slightly sank. But the moment I lifted my foot, it snapped back into place. "What was that?" they exclaimed simultaneously. If someone stepped on it without knowing, they'd think a floor had collapsed. "Look, the floor sinks a bit." "It's like a trap," I clarified. "That's dangerous. Is there something wrong with this house?" They reacted, suddenly concerned. Their previous disregard for the sentimental value of the villa to me seemed momentarily forgotten as they faced the unexpected reality of its physical quirks. I calmly explained the situation, and they all looked at me with surprise and skepticism. "It's not a flaw," I assured them. "My father deliberately installed these features. This house is what you might call a mechanical mansion or a trick house." "Why would he do that?" they asked, perplexed. "Well, my father was a huge fan of ninjas. He invested a lot of time and money in this villa, which was not only his pride and joy, but also a showcase of his creativity," I explained. "As a child, I often came here while he worked on the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why the villa is full of traps and clever contraptions, like a shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that drops when stepped on, a door that only opens in a specific sequence, hidden doors, and even secret rooms. This house is a reflection of my father's dreams and his inventive spirit developed over many years. Of course, this place is familiar to me, having visited since childhood and learned from my father how to navigate all these traps. I have no trouble with them. But it's a different story for my husband and in-laws who are unfamiliar with it. I warned you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also mentioned it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's fascination with ninja gadgets was widely known among our relatives. What surprised me was that my husband and his parents had been oblivious to it. At first, my husband claimed he hadn't heard about it, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they looked to my husband for guidance. Amid their confusion, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to tumble. Seeing them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, my tone more sarcastic than sincere. They had been enchanted by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was catching up with them. Even my explanations about the trap dangers seemed to go unheard. "This won't be a problem. We'll adjust," my husband replied, trying to sound confident. I smiled knowingly, understanding his attempt but also aware of the challenges they would face in a house filled with my father's intricate contraptions. I informed them that I would return to the apartment to prepare for our move. However, my real intention was to stay behind. I needed some time alone to go through my father's belongings, finding comfort in the quiet. It gave me the space to gradually regain a sense of optimism and start envisioning my future. In just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough of life in the villa. Meanwhile, my father's villa had become a minor attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion nestled in the residential area. Whenever the villa was occupied, curious locals and visitors, drawn by its reputation, would come to see the famous house. I remembered times when strangers toured the villa and local children played around it, bringing energy and liveliness to the place. My father had listed both the villas and our former home's phone numbers in the newsletters. But now that the family home's number was inactive, any inquiries would be redirected to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was fluent in foreign languages, which made it easy for me to handle calls from international visitors. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with this. They couldn't understand foreign languages and were already overwhelmed by the challenging lifestyle of navigating the house's many traps. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the constant stream of unexpected visitors and challenging phone calls, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live in this apartment together? Consider it," they suggested, desperate to escape the villa. They had eagerly anticipated inheriting the villa after my father's passing, but ironically, they couldn't handle living there for even 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers already filled out and stamped. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, please leave quickly," I explained with a heavy sigh. I couldn't forgive him for his insensitivity and the way he had dismissed my feelings without discussion or explanation. He had unilaterally decided we would live with his parents. He had never shared household responsibilities with me before and had comfortably left them all to me. During our time at the villa, I felt trapped and overwhelmed, yet he seemed completely indifferent to my struggles. Facing my husband and his parents in our apartment, I realized I couldn't continue living with someone so self-centered. His actions had spoken louder than any promises he could make. "What's going on? You used to love me, right?" he asked, puzzled by my cold demeanor. I couldn't help but scoff at his naive question. How can I love someone who secretly wished for my father's death and celebrated when he passed? I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. I handed him the divorce papers and firmly instructed all 3 of them to leave the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you," I asserted. When my husband raised his voice, disregarding the disturbance it caused our neighbors, I reminded him calmly, "Victoria, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. Remember, this apartment is in my name." They fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They had relied on me for financial support, and now, with little of their own, they faced a harsh reality. Determined to cut ties before they could start their lengthy persuasions, I watched them leave. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they ended up in a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to get by. The old apartment was so much better, they often complained. Initially, my husband felt guilty and apologized repeatedly. However, as time passed, his guilt turned into resentment towards his parents. Because of their age, they didn't work much, and their attempts were short-lived. Eventually, they used up all their savings and pension. The constant arguments drove a wedge between them as a family. The thin walls of their new apartment barely contained their daily disagreements. Even when they received noise complaints, they refused to apologize. Instead, they responded with hostility, making themselves unpopular with the neighbors. It seemed inevitable, but they would have to find another place to live soon. My husband, who had once enjoyed the convenience of working from home, now found himself in a cramped space with no proper workspace. This severely impacted his ability to focus, and as a result, his reputation and sales suffered. He struggled to make ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and was considering taking on multiple part-time jobs just to get by. In moments of clarity, my in-laws realized that letting their son make decisions for them had been their biggest mistake. During their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps and each other. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess," they would argue, pointing fingers but never acknowledging their own roles in their downfall. After the divorce, my career as a product designer took a significant leap forward. To cope with the grief of my father's passing and the chaos that ensued, I poured my creativity into designing with a unique twist, incorporating ninja-inspired elements inspired by my father's interests. I shared these designs on social media, where they quickly gained popularity. To my surprise, a major cosmetics company reached out, intrigued by my designs. They wanted me to create packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja themes. Embracing the project, I saw it as a way to honor my father's memory. It turned out to be a huge success, propelling my career to new heights. I found solace in sharing updates at my parents' graves, telling them about my achievements and how their legacy continued to inspire my work. I decided to keep the villa, transforming it into a unique mechanical house filled with memories of my father. I organized tours and made slight adjustments to ensure it was safe for visitors, allowing locals and tourists to explore and enjoy it for free. Before long, the house garnered significant media attention. The income from this exposure was invaluable, helping to cover its maintenance costs. Moreover, articles about the house were translated into different languages, garnering support from international fans, including elderly enthusiasts who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I devoted myself to maintaining this enchanting place. The mechanical house buzzed with activity, especially popular among local children. "Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the tricks? Show us," they'd eagerly inquire. With the help of local volunteers, we ensured everyone could play safely. Foreign tourists, in particular, were captivated by features like the hidden floorboard and secret doors. While losing my father and the upheaval of inheriting the villa led to my divorce, the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories that I now share with loved ones and visitors alike. It has also sparked a personal transformation, propelling me forward with renewed optimism and hope. Guess what, Rosalie? My family's coming over, and you're in charge of hosting them at this fancy restaurant. Can you handle that? Oh, and by the way, do you know how to manage money? You didn't save anything, did you? Rosalie was puzzled. What do you mean? What's mine is yours. So, this restaurant you own. It's mine too. Everything's free. That sounded crazy to Rosalie. Her husband Kyle seemed clueless, thinking he could just invite the family over and not pay. Something wasn't right. Plus, he didn't seem to get it. He was about to land himself in trouble. "Kyle, we can't give everything away for free. But don't worry about the money. I know you don't have savings, and I knew you were inviting the family today. So, I already arranged for someone else to pay in advance." Stop lying. I never mentioned inviting the family, and none of them said anything about being billed. My husband insisted, gesturing toward our relatives. His parents, his brother, his wife, and a few others were chatting with a waitress nearby. He smirked and made fun of them while I struggled not to burst out laughing, my lips twitching. "I've been getting ready for this day. I'll do my best to entertain them, just like you want," I replied, smiling to myself as I listened to him. Our in-laws approached. "Hi, Rosalie. We're here to visit today. What a lovely place this is. Everyone seems to be having a great time," they said warmly, their demeanor a sharp contrast to my husband's. "Mom, Dad, thanks for coming. Rosalie's happy you're here. Today's on me," my husband said casually, even though he planned to eat for free. He lied effortlessly, not just to his parents, but probably to his brother and other relatives too. He's lied before, but he's so confident he won't get caught because everyone sees him as the perfect son. Rosalie's really been excelling. She took over the restaurant from her late parents and has been running it impressively. It wasn't easy at first, but she turned things around. She's my pride and joy, he boasted to his parents, deliberately praising me, his pride and joy, to deceive them. But in reality, he barely sees me as more than a maid. As he spoke, my in-laws turned to me, nodding in approval. They've always recognized my efforts since the beginning of our marriage. Their kindness shone through their eyes. Meanwhile, my husband subtly changed his expression, silently warning me to keep quiet. Rosalie's been working hard, and Kyle's doing well too. Everything's going smoothly at Brown Trading, right? Your salary's been increasing, hasn't it? They asked. Yeah, that's correct. I'm respected at Brown Trading, and my boss has high hopes for me. I aim to lead my team through actions and results, and I'll keep up the good work, my husband replied confidently. That's our son, all right. Spending $155,000 like that isn't something just anyone can do, his parents remarked proudly, but my husband's expression darkened slightly at that moment. Today, we have 15 relatives dining with us, including my in-laws and brother-in-law's family. It's $11,000 per person, totaling $115,000. I calculated silently, knowing my husband was trying to get it all for free, unaware of the cost. When he realized it was pricier than he thought, he quickly regained composure to avoid exposing his lie. This one's on me, everyone. It's the least I can do. I just got my bonus, so no worries at all. Leave it to me, he declared, puffing up his chest as the in-laws chuckled softly. Checking the time, it was 6:00 p.m., so I guided my husband and in-laws to their reserved seats. The other relatives followed suit. Just as they were settling in, my husband shot me a creepy grin. An hour later, I approached their table in the banquet room. They were enjoying themselves, oblivious to the surroundings. Feel free to order more, everyone. It boosts restaurant sales, and Rosalie will be delighted, so go ahead, my husband encouraged, each word accompanied by a flurry of extra orders. With the banquet meals and additional orders, the bill had surpassed $20,000. Everyone assumed my husband, a corporate elite with a hefty income, was treating them. While some hesitated, my husband seemed to push them to order more. That's when I decided to set the record straight, loud enough for all to hear. Since it's Kyle's treat, I had $60,000 transferred yesterday, so everyone, please enjoy yourselves without holding back, I announced, causing a buzz of surprise among the relatives. $60,000. Classic Kyle, were words of almost admiration that flew around. While the relatives reacted like this, my husband wore a bewildered look, clueless about what was going on. I didn't miss his expression and added a line to start my counterattack. Well, the $60,000 isn't for the food. It's for alimony, actually, I stated, causing puzzled looks among the buzzing relatives. Alimony, Kyle? What's this about alimony? One of them asked. No, I don't know about any alimony. Sometimes Rosalie jokes around, so please don't mind her. Come on, Rosalie, don't upset everyone with jokes like that. My husband tried to brush it off, but he was clearly the most troubled. His face was smiling, but his eyes told a different story. The way he looked at me was terrifying. But it wasn't done. Kyle, you're the one making uncomfortable jokes here. I think it's time the family knew that, right? I said firmly, handing him a piece of paper and a bank book. As he examined them closely, his face turned pale. The alimony is for cheating. Kyle has been unfaithful. He's not the person you all think he is. He can lie and deceive people without a second thought, I revealed. The atmosphere in the banquet room shifted abruptly. The once lively chatter ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. The document I handed to my husband was the original alimony claim, and the bank book showed a record of a $60,000 transfer. Everyone's attention was fixed on my husband and me, and silence lingered for a few seconds. But it was my husband who broke it. How funny, Rosalie. That's quite something. It looks just like a real statement in a bank book. But really, this is going too far. There's no way I would cheat. It seemed like he had shifted back to his usual confident demeanor, but that confidence quickly faded, and I couldn't help but smile. What are you talking about, Kyle? You're the one who's gone too far. Not only cheating but also trying to bully me into eating for free, lying to all the relatives that it's your treat. That's too much of a joke. Correct yourself quickly, everyone. Don't take Rosalie's words to heart. Without needing to say anything, the relatives seemed unable to believe it outright, and no one spoke up. I didn't react to my husband's words either, just watching his actions closely. Gradually, he started to panic. That's when he tried to get his parents on his side. Dad, Mom, tell her to stop these senseless jokes at a time like this. Ah, yes, everyone calm down and listen to me, his dad began. Rosalie isn't making any senseless jokes. She's just stating the facts. It's undeniable that Kyle has been unfaithful, and she's not threatening Rosie. He's trying to get today's meal for free, too. What are you two even saying? Are you taking what Rosie said seriously? That's not funny at all, my husband protested, but his parents seemed convinced. The only thing that's not funny is this situation. We've come here knowing everything to confront you, I declared. Yes, I had already confessed everything to my in-laws, revealing how my husband uses his outward kindness to play the dutiful son while behind the scenes, he's up to no good. Even as we waited for our reservation time, he tried to deceive his parents, but they saw through his lies. Enough. I would never deceive everyone. You're ruining the good mood we had, Rosalie. What are you going to do about this? My disclosure and having the in-laws on my side were completely unexpected for him. He visibly started to lose his composure, standing up and glaring at me intensely, as if he might lunge at me any moment. Come on, brother, calm down. Let's sit down and talk this over calmly. Nicholas, you believe me, right? Interjected his brother, my brother-in-law Nicholas, cutting through my husband's angry shouts. Nicholas, busy with his own job, was attending today with his wife Yasmin. I knew Nicholas and my husband had been close since before I started dating him, and he is as gentle and consistently smiling as the in-laws. However, Nicholas's next action would utterly defeat my husband. He pulled a thick envelope out of his bag and handed it to my husband, saying, "You believe me, right, brother?" "How can I believe you when you've been cheating with my wife, Nicholas?" "You what?" My husband's accusation hung heavy in the air as Nicholas handed over the envelope. Inside was a report on the infidelity investigation. It turns out my husband had been cheating with Nicholas's wife, Yasmin. Just before my father-in-law had said, "We've come here knowing everything," and by we, he meant the brother-in-law's family too. And it turns out, I learned about my husband's infidelity thanks to Nicholas. Hesitantly, my husband checked the contents of the envelope, turning pale as a ghost. Inside were numerous photos of him cheating with Yasmin, pictures of them dining at a fancy restaurant, looking into each other's eyes. There were photos of them being cozy in a car and others of them embracing and kissing in front of a hotel. There's no way he could just say they were just going out. It was indeed a decisive moment, a hellish scene. "Is this a joke? Unbelievable, Kyle did this," were the whispers I heard. The relatives around us were in turmoil, and the banquet hall buzzed in a whole different way. For my husband, it couldn't have gotten any worse. He was completely flustered now. No, wait. This investigation report is fake. The photos must be doctored because I haven't cheated with Yasmin. We didn't cheat, right? He pleaded, trying to enlist Yasmin's support in his last-ditch effort. Immediately after Yasmin, now the center of attention, bowed deeply to the floor in full prostration. "Everyone, I am terribly sorry. I have had an affair with Kyle." Yasmin's confession stunned the room. My husband in particular was visibly shaken. He hadn't anticipated Yasmin fully admitting to the affair. He had been insisting the alimony bill and the bank book were fake, only thinking of himself and taking me for granted. He couldn't have imagined this. Yasmin's earnest apology captivated not only my husband but also the rest of the banquet hall. But it wasn't just my husband who was affected. All the relatives were stunned by Yasmin's admission. As her forehead remained on the floor, she slowly began to speak. It really was just a fling. Nicholas is a wonderful husband, but, well, it lacked excitement, you might say. Just doing housework and waiting at home for Nicholas to return, I started to feel like my life would forever be the same. And suddenly, I got bored. When I approached Kyle, he was happy to go along. Everyone listened in silence to Yasmin's voice, mixed with regret and reflection. As she raised her head and revealed more truths, I tried to end it immediately, knowing it was wrong. But Kyle got serious about it. He threatened to expose everything if I tried to break it off. I know it sounds like an excuse now, but I am truly sorry. Yasmin's confession left the relatives staring in disbelief at such a lack of morals. Yasmin had initiated the affair, and though she was threatened, it's hard to completely sympathize with her. But she came here today to admit her mistakes and apologize, which is somewhat redeemable. However, my husband tried to escape by lying and making excuses, unaware that he was just tightening the noose around his own neck. He really is a fool, brother. It's all useless. Rosalie, and our parents know everything. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you're going to pay Nicholas. When did you realize? You didn't even do an investigation. You must have been sure, right? Yes, I heard it from someone I truly despise, you brother. Right, Rosalie? That's right. It wasn't just Yasmin. He had his hands on other women too. What, Rosalie? How much do you know? Just give me a break already. Too bad, Kyle. I know everything, and if anyone should be asking for mercy, it's us. I never thought you'd even make a move on an employee at a restaurant. I continued, then called the woman into the banquet hall. This woman was the waitress who had been talking with the in-laws, Nicholas, Yasmin, and several other relatives while they waited for their reservation time. Turns out, while having an affair with Yasmin, my husband had also been making advances towards this waitress. She had also attended the same school with me back in our student days. Before even consulting Rosalie, who was the restaurant owner, she came to me. Kyle had threatened to destroy your family if you spilled the beans to Rosalie. You're really horrible. I've said it before, but we know everything, brother. All you can do now is admit your guilt and apologize, just like Yasmin did. Kyle, let me ask you something. Why would you deceive Rosalie to carry on with your affairs? From what we can see, Rosalie has been nothing but supportive. She's been managing the restaurant that she inherited from her parents and taking care of home as well. What does she ever do to you? Under the cold stares, my husband flinched at his father-in-law's question. I thought there was no valid excuse for infidelity, but if I had been unconsciously pushing him into a corner, I wanted to reflect on myself too. Awaiting his response, what he said next was shocking. I married Rosalie because I felt sorry for her. Before our marriage, she was struggling to turn the restaurant around with both parents gone. I was the only one she could rely on. I couldn't live without that feeling of superiority. And then what? Rosalie managed to turn it around. The restaurant became popular, and suddenly I found it boring. That's why I thought of dumping her, my husband said, smirking as if he had nothing to lose. Despite already knowing his true nature, a deep disgust welled up from within. It seemed he viewed everyone but himself as mere tools. The cold stares from the relatives quickly turned to pity. A feeling of superiority felt good, got bored, and decided to dump her. Kyle, do you realize what you're saying? You're successful in your big company because Rosalie supported you. Don't you have any gratitude? No, you're wrong. I succeeded because of my own skills. Besides, isn't it normal for a wife to support her husband? Does a mother serve a father expecting gratitude? No, right? Rosalie served me because she loved me. It's presumptuous to expect gratitude for that, my husband argued. Enough, Kyle. I find you repulsive. We are cutting ties with you, but we will watch you until you take responsibility. Be prepared. Fine, cut ties or whatever. I have a stable job. I can live on my own. In fact, it's a relief, right, Rosalie? You can enjoy life more without me around. I'll pay whatever alimony or anything else, so don't worry. My husband laughed, seemingly without a care. Looking at him, I thought again, he doesn't understand anything, knows nothing at all. Really? You can pay alimony? Aren't you about to be sued by your company, Kyle? A lawsuit for damages isn't cheap, you know, I retorted. What? The company's suing me? That's ridiculous. You were bragging today, weren't you, that you're respected at Brown Trading, that your boss has high expectations, that you lead your subordinates with actions and results. But it was all lies. In reality, you've been threatening your subordinates and embezzling company money. What? I would never do something like that. I rose through the ranks on my own merit. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing, my husband protested. What you don't know, Kyle, is that all the subordinates you threatened have come forward. The company has been aware of the issue for a while. But you don't have to believe me, I'm just stating facts. It'll be interesting to see how far you fall. I explained to him in a calm tone, trying to make him understand. And the color drained from his face. If he really had no idea, he could have laughed it off. But the truth is, he was misbehaving at work too, so denying it was impossible. Seeing the realization dawn on him, he quickly turned, pleading, Rosalie, you're right. I knew nothing. I'd only said those things because I wanted to leave. Please continue to support me if we divorce now. I stopped him right there. Don't say anything more. The relatives are about to tear you apart, Kyle. It's too late for anything now, and it doesn't matter whether you knew or didn't know. No one will help you, and you'll get your wish to live alone. Oh, and by the way, make sure you pay for today's bill. It was your treat, wasn't it? The moment I said this, Kyle collapsed to his knees. No one reached out to help him. Today, after threatening me, deceiving the relatives to get a free meal, he finds himself unable to get off scot-free. Afterwards, I filed for divorce, and Kyle was sued by his company. Kyle ended up incurring a significant amount of debt. The reason Kyle had no savings despite dealing with brown trading was that he was footing the bill for entertainment expenses with the employees. However, this entertainment was merely a pretext. In reality, Kyle was just squandering money at nightclubs. Given that Kyle, who had a high-paying job, had no savings, it's clear he had been recklessly spending his money. This was entirely Kyle's own doing, so he should have dealt with it himself. But instead, he asked for help from his in-laws and Nicholas's family. Of course, no one was willing to help. Kyle had defiantly claimed he could live on his own and even laughed off being disowned. So it's no surprise, yet Kyle continued his futile attempts and kept sending messages to my smartphone incessantly. I was wrong. I shouldn't have cheated. I regret it. Please help me. The messages clearly showed he was desperate, but it felt like just another act. Given his history of deceit and manipulation, it's hard to believe him still. I have not blocked Kyle's contact. I've left it unblocked so that I can receive his messages. I want to see what becomes of a person who has only thought of himself and demeaned others around him. It's uncertain what will happen to Kyle now that he has hit rock bottom. One thing I do know is that unless Kyle truly repents and changes himself, he will not be able to climb out of this pit. That much I am sure of. Rosalie, I am truly sorry for what my brother has done. It's irreparable. Nicholas apologized to me after divorcing Yasmin. The in-laws who came with him also deeply bowed their heads. I am a failure as a parent. I can't believe I didn't see my son's true nature sooner. If only I had realized earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Kyle took advantage of your kindness, Rosalie, and did whatever he wanted. It was our responsibility to stop him. You all don't need to apologize. If anything, I am grateful. I had no one else to rely on, no parents or relatives. So thank you for always being on my side. From the beginning of our marriage, the in-laws and Nicholas have been my allies. That I was able to turn around the inherited restaurant was possible only with their support. They are genuinely kind and always smiling. They showed such fury on my behalf that was incredibly comforting to me, who is utterly alone. I will never forget this warmth for as long as I live. Unlimited access to the spa from now on. How could John keep this a secret? It's just evil, unforgivable. Without my knowledge, my in-laws' place had transformed into a luxury hotel. Now, I can enjoy the spa every day and indulge in delicious meals. But kidding aside, the thought of them using my precious son for their own desires, it's outrageous. They better be ready. My name is Amy, a 35-year-old office worker in the administrative department of a pharmacy. I live with my husband John and our first-grade son Edward. John and I met through a colleague at work, and from the moment we met, we clicked. We quickly became close, started dating, and were married the following year. With my upbeat husband John and lively son Edward, I was leading a life of ordinary happiness. Another thing that makes me glad I married John is having his mother-in-law Renda in our lives. Having lost my mother early, I was raised by my father. My mother-in-law, who I barely knew as a mother figure, treated me like her own daughter since the start of our marriage. Amy, do you have any plans this Sunday? Why don't you and Edward come over for dinner? She would say, always treating us to delicious meals. When Edward was younger, she was a great support for my parenting struggles, even helping to pick him up from daycare when I couldn't leave work. Edward grew very attached to her, and spending Christmas at my in-laws had become a tradition for our family. Amy, your mother-in-law really is the best, isn't she? My colleague Emma would say, listening with an envious look. It was Emma who introduced me to John. They had been friends since college. Emma, with her bright personality and many friends, joined the company with me. We were close enough to share work frustrations, family matters, and personal issues. The pharmacists and other staff were kind, and the company had excellent benefits. Emma and other colleagues with children continued to work full-time as before our pregnancies. Recently, John's been saying he has to work on weekends and isn't home even on his days off, I said, sounding a bit discontented. Are you suspecting him of cheating? Emma laughed. That's laughable. But it was true. John had been away from home more often. Dad, are you working again today? Edward asked, wanting to play with John. I have to work, sorry, John said apologetically. I couldn't say anything back, feeling proud of John for working hard for our family. Little did I know back then that such dedication would turn into such a terrible betrayal. Rock, paper, scissors. Oh, the worst, I sighed. My workplace is usually closed on Sundays and holidays, but about once a month, we're on duty for the hospital gate on Sundays. Accordingly, our pharmacy also opens. It seems Christmas is our turn this time. We played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would work. Unfortunately, I lost. I wanted to spend Christmas at my in-laws, but no choice. I have to do my best, I muttered to myself, only to be chuckled at by the friend sitting next to me. It's not funny, I said to her. She laughed and apologized. Sorry. This woman is also an officer, and we met at the daycare. Her son Henry and Edward are very close, and our families have become friends. We used to go on trips together, though we've been too busy lately. Her husband Tom is also a kind and gentle person. Her name is Isabella. I call her Henry's mom, or Isabella. By the way, Isabella, thanks for playing with Edward in the park last Sunday when I had to work. When John had to take care of Edward on weekends, today I played with Henry in the park, Edward told me. When I asked John about it, he said he ran into Henry and his parents at the park by chance and played together. Really? I asked John, but his vague response frustrated me. By the way, mother-in-law called and said she's looking forward to Christmas. I can't make it, but have fun. I can't go because of work, so it looks like Christmas will be without me this year, I told Isabella. Mother-in-law sounded very disappointed when I told her I couldn't come, but maybe I'll put John to work and have him do a thorough house cleaning. It's been a while, she said, sounding quite excited about the idea. Feel free to use him as much as you like, I laughed as I talked with mother-in-law. It was close to Christmas when this happened. I was working a late shift that day and had to do some unexpected overtime. I hurriedly tried to contact John but couldn't reach him. I ended up calling my son's mobile phone. Mom, are you done with work? Edward answered the phone with a cheerful voice, happy to hear from me. Sorry, Edward, Mom is working late. Can you put Dad on the phone? But Edward said John wasn't there. Wondering where they could be, I said, Hello, Amy. It must be tough working so late. John called and said he's going to be late because of work, mother-in-law said. Hello, Amy. It must be tough working so late. John called and said he's going to be late because of work, mother-in-law said. She told me that while she was preparing dinner in her house. John called her, Sorry, Mom. Amy's on a late shift and I should get home early, but I have to work overtime. Please help. After saying that, John hung up and couldn't be reached again. I was furious with John's actions. He hadn't contacted me at all, thinking maybe he wouldn't get caught. I rushed home. John still hadn't returned, and at the dinner table were mother-in-law and Edward, eating. Mother-in-law said she was happy to have dinner alone with her grandson. Even though I apologize, I really respect mother-in-law. John came home late that night. Hey, about work, you promised to take care of things when I have a late shift. Can you at least keep that promise? I said quietly, What can I do? It's work, I muttered to myself. John raised his voice and even suggested that I quit my job or become a part-timer. When John met me, he praised me for working in healthcare, but that John who said such nice things is no longer here. Our current lifestyle is also thanks to my income. Even though I'm an equal partner to John, he's been doing less housework lately and hasn't been taking care of Edward either. And this guy, hey, you're not cheating, are you? I looked at John with cold eyes. There's no way. You're overthinking, Amy. He suddenly changed his tone and put his arm around my shoulder. That said it all. John has always tried to appease me like this when he's lying or feeling guilty. How dare he cheat? He better be prepared. I was glad Edward was asleep. I didn't want to show our son such an ugly fight. From then on, we acted normal in front of Edward, but when it was just the two of us, we hardly talked or even made eye contact. When I told my colleague Emma about what happened, she said, That guy is the worst. Let me know if you need anything. That was a cool thing to say. Days passed, and before I knew it, it was Christmas Eve. Take good care of Edward, will you? Say hello to Renda for me, I said to John, but as usual, he didn't even meet my eyes. I'm off then, he replied indifferently, and John and Edward left for my in-laws' house. What's with that attitude? It's so annoying, I thought to myself. I spent a lonely Christmas Eve alone in our eerily quiet house. There was no contact from John, but thinking he was having a good time with mother-in-law gave me a little peace of mind. I remembered mother-in-law saying she'd make John clean the house. I wondered if he was being worn out by chores and couldn't help but feel a bit of schadenfreude. Little did I know John was doing something unthinkable at that time. Christmas Day was busy with quite a few patients. Fortunately, I didn't have to work overtime, so I left work and went straight home. I planned to join my in-laws the next afternoon and spend the holiday with mother-in-law. Might as well enjoy some alone time for a change. As I was thinking this, my mobile phone rang. It was mother-in-law. Thinking it was going to be a complaint about John being lazy, I answered. Amy, Merry Christmas. You must be tired from working on Christmas. You did great. Mother-in-law's voice sounded kind, not irritated at all. Merry Christmas, Renda. I wish I could have spent it with you too. Is Edward just playing games? When I asked, mother-in-law fell silent. Even after calling Renda's name a few times, there was no response. I wondered if it was a bad signal. Amy, John and Edward didn't come here this year. I spent Christmas alone, mother-in-law finally said, and then began to sob over the phone. I was in a panic. John and Edward definitely left the house yesterday. Where could they possibly be now? There was a long silence between mother-in-law and me. I'll head over to your place right now, I said. It's about a 40-minute drive to my in-laws. On the way, my mind was filled with thoughts of Edward. What if they were involved in an accident or some incident? These worries spun in my head. When I arrived at my in-laws, mother-in-law was already waiting outside. As soon as she got into my car, I asked quietly, should we call the police? Mother-in-law slowly shook her head. As I wondered why, mother-in-law began to speak. Amy, I'm really sorry about my stupid son. Do you think John is having an affair? Mother-in-law looked at me with teary eyes, and I almost started crying too. What? Actually, that's when I remembered something and hurriedly drove to a certain place. When we reached our destination, I called Edward's mobile phone. Hello? Is Dad nearby? I asked. Yeah, he's here. Come quickly, Mom, Edward answered immediately. Even though we have been apart for only a day, Edward's voice sounded dear to me. What is it, Amy? I'm busy right now. I heard John's voice on the phone, sounding like he wanted to end the call. Immediately, hearing that voice made me feel intense loathing, wanting to confront him. Renda, you said something about making him clean, right? So, are you at your parents' house now? John's response on the phone was calm. Yeah, that's right, Amy. I can't wait to see you. When did he become so adept at lying as easily as breathing? I thought to myself, should I have quit my job? Should I have tried harder at home? But none of that justifies an affair. Oh, so Renda, you started a luxury hotel. Does that mean unlimited spa access? How could John keep this a secret? I won't forgive him, I said in a low tone filled with hatred. On the phone, John seemed quite flustered by my accusation. His silence prompted me to continue. Hey, come out of the room. This is the luxury hotel I always wanted to visit. You said it was too expensive, remember? As I spoke fluently, John seemed to give up. I'm sorry, he said in a barely audible voice. I found this place using the GPS on Edward's mobile phone. This hotel, not far from my in-laws, was the place I wanted to visit. The fact that John, who said it was too expensive for me, was enjoying himself here with his mistress infuriated me. Perhaps it showed on my face because on the way to the hotel, mother-in-law kept apologizing. It was then that I found out for the first time that when I worked late shifts, mother-in-law was almost always the one taking care of Edward. I hadn't noticed because she would return home before I got back. John, who was terrible at cooking, used to buy ready-made food, and if mother-in-law tried to cook, he stubbornly refused her. Looking back, that must have been a strategy to keep me from finding out. Even during that short time, John was so enthralled with his mistress. Mother-in-law initially believed John was really working, but as his absences increased, her suspicions of an affair naturally grew. The climax was when mother-in-law saw John walking arm in arm with an unknown woman, looking intimate. She debated whether to consult me but decided against it. The main reason was that she didn't want to lose the chance to see Amy and Edward. Mother-in-law sobbed in the passenger seat, knowing she cared so much for us. Tears streamed down my cheeks too. Mother-in-law was more considerate of me and Edward than John ever was. This time, John had contacted her, saying he would spend some rare time alone with Edward, but asked her to cover for him, saying he'd be at her house. Mother-in-law, suspecting a lie, worried about Edward and contacted me. I despised John from the bottom of my heart for involving so many people, I thought bitterly. At the hotel, after explaining the situation, we were made to wait in the lobby. Then, a man and a woman with guilty expressions on their faces emerged, along with Mom. I was getting bored. I played a law with Henry, who was Edward's friend from daycare. Henry looked around and said, "Looks like my dad hasn't arrived yet." He seemed a bit disappointed. John's mistress was Isabella, another mom from the daycare. I wasn't sure how long the affair had been going on, but these two fools had boldly involved our children. Apparently, they had told their sons that their respective parents would join them later. How despicable. John had booked 2 rooms, one for the children and the other for themselves. So repulsive. Thanks to the hotel's kindness, mother-in-law and I were allowed to stay in a room for a while, where she looked after the children in the other room. Isabella having an affair with my husband and then talking to me normally at committee meetings was unbelievable. I spoke in a calm tone. I thought Amy hadn't noticed anything. It was so funny. Isabella laughed. What is this woman? I never would have guessed that Isabella, who seemed so fragile and beautiful, was actually this spiteful. I stared at her quietly, pondering the unpredictability of people. John himself seemed a bit taken aback by Isabella's true nature. This woman, without being asked, happily began to talk about how and when she started her affair with John. Their relationship began when our children were in senior kindergarten. On a day I was sick and couldn't attend a parent meeting, so I asked John to go in my place. It was Isabella who made the first move. We had known each other as families and had each other's contact information. From that day on, they began to communicate more frequently. It started with complaints about their spouses but gradually turned into personal conversations. Soon, they began meeting more often, and it didn't take long for their relationship to become romantic. But now it's all over. What a pity, Isabella chuckled, her nonchalant attitude heard loud and clear. I said, "You seem quite relaxed for someone about to face serious consequences." Ignoring her surprised look, I stood up decisively, facing my bewildered husband. I said, "Come on, get up and check out. I've called a ride for you, so get ready quickly," I said with a slight smile as I left the room. Seeing Isabella's face twitch a bit from my remark felt oddly satisfying. Now begins the hellish drive. The trip isn't over until we're home, I thought to myself. After checking out, as we headed to the parking lot, Henry ran joyfully towards the person he was waiting for, Henry's dad, Tom, Isabella's husband. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Henry. Have you been good?" Tom said in his usual calm manner. "Dad, can Edward and I go home first? Mom and you need to talk," Henry said gently, and the 2 boys happily got into my car. "Thank you. We'll have a long talk on the way home," I said, glaring at Isabella. I had learned from contacting Tom that he was supposedly at work and Isabella had lied about visiting her parents far away to come here. Both of them were utterly despicable. I was forced to come here because John threatened to use Edward to ostracize Henry at school if I didn't. Isabella started with a shallow lie. "Really? You seemed so eager to tell me everything just a while ago," I continued calmly. Isabella laughed. What is this woman? I thought, staring at her quietly, pondering the unpredictability of people. John himself seemed taken aback by Isabella's true nature. She happily began to talk about how and when she started her affair with John, and it was unbelievable to hear. Their relationship began when our children were in senior kindergarten. On a day I was sick and couldn't attend a parent meeting, so I asked John to go in my place. It was Isabella who made the first move. We had known each other as families and had each other's contact information. From that day on, they began to communicate more frequently. It started with complaints about their spouses but gradually turned into personal conversations. Soon, they began meeting more often, and it didn't take long for their relationship to become romantic. But now it's all over. What a pity, Isabella chuckled with a nonchalant attitude. I said, "You seem quite relaxed for someone about to face serious consequences." I ignored her surprised look, standing up decisively, facing my bewildered husband. I placed the voice recorder with our earlier conversation in Tom's hand as Isabella desperately tried to grab it. "Don't bother. I have another copy just for myself," I said, smiling as I got into my car. As I drove away, John's pathetic voice called out from behind, "Wait, what am I supposed to do now? Go home alone?" Oh, but I thought you might feel lonely, so I arranged a ride for you too. I pointed behind John. Behind him stood my colleague Emma and her husband, who was also a friend from college. Apparently, John owed him a big favor and couldn't stand up to him. I glanced over and saw they were already scolding him. Emma gave me a look that said, "Leave it to me." Though my husband was a disappointment, I was lucky to have supportive people around me. As I expected, everyone's ride home was hellish. Isabella desperately denied her relationship with John in the car, but no one believed her with the voice recorder playing. Eventually, she admitted to having other affairs. I don't know if John was serious, but he was the one being played from the start. The reason Isabella targeted John was so petty because Edward got the lead role in a school play over Henry. I was furious. I planned to make him pay a hefty alimony. Henry's custody went to Tom, of course. He said he was going back to his parents' place, a bit far away. John came home late that night, looking like a ghost. It seems like he got a good scolding from Emma and her husband. John always said his college friends were very important to him, as if it were a mantra from the beginning of our marriage. Now, because of this incident, John probably won't be invited to their gatherings anymore. It's nothing but karma. He brought this upon himself. He should regret it. What angered me the most was that every time he met his mistress, John told Edward, "Today it's a secret between us men, okay? Don't tell Mom." Edward kept that promise and never told me anything. When I found out, I was moved to tears. John and I successfully finalized our divorce. "You stupid man, how can you face your late father now? Don't ever show your face again," mother-in-law said, slapping him. John finally realized the gravity of his actions and cried like a child. But my heart didn't waver. Afterward, John requested a transfer to a branch outside the prefecture. He paid the alimony and is keeping up with child support. As for me and Edward, we're living with mother-in-law at her place. I considered returning to my parents' home, but my father has remarried and has a new family. Living together would be impossible. Mother-in-law suggested we stay with her until our lives stabilize. People are often surprised by our unique relationship. But I still cherish mother-in-law like my real mother. I hesitated about what to call her, but I still call her Renda. We're keeping it a secret, but we plan to celebrate her 60th birthday at that hotel. I splurged and booked the most expensive room. This should turn the unpleasant memories into enjoyable ones. My job became far, and Edward had to transfer schools, but Tom's parents lived near our former in-laws, so the boys ended up in the same school again. That was a surprise. Once things settle down, I might rent an apartment near work. But for now, I want to cherish this time a little longer.